Welcome to Outside Views. Today we're tackling a question that's been circulating in political and economic circles for months now. Are we witnessing a Brexit U-turn? Has the UK finally reached the point where even the staunchest Remainers and Brexiteers alike are recognizing that something needs to change? And if so, what would this shift mean for Britain's future? The latest headlines have revealed a fascinating turn of events. Lord Peter Mandelson, one of the most prominent Remainers, has stated that Britain must break loose from Brexit trauma and embrace the so-called new opportunities created by the split. Mandelson, now the UK's new ambassador to Washington, is advocating a more aggressive pursuit of trade with the United States, effectively pivoting away from the EU reset strategy that Keir Starmer's government has been pursuing. And this is a striking departure from his previous position. Remember, Mandelson, along with Keir Starmer, was a leading advocate for a second referendum to overturn Brexit. Now, he's arguing that the UK must capitalize on Brexit consequences rather than continue looking back at what was lost. But what does this shift in rhetoric really mean? Is it an admission that Brexit has failed, or is it simply an effort to adapt to the political and economic realities Britain faces today? To answer that, we need to explore the broader context of Britain's economic stagnation, its ongoing trade dilemmas, and whether the UK can truly compete on the global stage outside the EU's regulatory framework. The UK's economy has been struggling since Brexit, and the numbers don't lie. Trade with the EU has declined significantly, UK businesses have faced major bureaucratic hurdles, and the promised trade deals with other nations, including the much vaunted deal with the United States, have failed to materialize. The idea that Brexit would free Britain to forge its own economic destiny has been proven false time and time again, with the country experiencing slower growth compared to its European counterpart. That's why Mandelson is more surprising, because yet Mandelson's statements suggest a pivot away from acknowledging these failures and instead focusing on the supposed opportunities available outside the EU. He argues that Britain should cut red tape, deregulate, and embrace a more US-style economy. He also suggests that the UK should position itself as a commercial and technological alternative to Europe, making itself attractive to American investors and businesses. And this echoes what many pro-Brexit politicians had promised years ago. The idea of a Singapore-on-Thames, a highly deregulated, low-tax economy designed to compete with the EU by diverging from its standards. But let's be clear, these promises have largely gone unfulfilled. The UK has not become a magnet for investment. Foreign direct investment has fallen. Businesses continue to relocate operations to the EU, and even domestic industries are struggling under the weight of Brexit-related challenges. So why is Mandelson making this argument now? One possibility is that the Labour government is feeling the pressure from both sides. On the one hand, Keir Starmer's government has committed to an EU reset, seeking to restore better trading terms with Brussels and minimize the economic damage of Brexit. On the other hand, there's a growing recognition that the EU itself is facing economic struggles, particularly in sectors like technology and AI, where the US is currently leading. Mandelson's suggestion to shift Britain's focus towards the US could be an attempt to future-proof the UK economy, anticipating that stronger ties with the US will yield greater benefits than slowly reintegrating with the EU's regulatory framework. He also makes a crucial observation that the EU itself is struggling with economic stagnation in parts and regulatory inefficiencies. But he forgets one big election here in Germany. But does this mean Britain would be better off turning away from Europe altogether? Well, let's look at the numbers. Despite Brexit, the EU remains the UK's largest trading partner. Over 40% of UK exports still go to the EU, and frictionless trade with the bloc is critical for many industries, including manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and agriculture. Ignoring this reality and prioritizing a US-focused trade strategy is not just wishful thinking, it's risky. The United States has repeatedly shown little interest in giving Britain a favorable trade deal. And even during the first Trump administration, when Brexit supporters hoped for a quick and easy agreement, negotiations stalled over American demands on food standards, pharmaceuticals, and market access. A US trade deal would likely force the UK to lower its regulatory standards and then undermining its own industries and potentially making it harder to trade with the EU in the future. But there's another layer to Mandelson's argument, one that could signal a deeper shift in Brexit rhetoric within the Labour Party. His statement that the UK must break loose and rethink and reinvent itself after Brexit might not be an outright endorsement of Brexit, but rather an acknowledgement that the political reality has changed. For years, Labour struggled with how to position itself on Brexit. Starmer, as I said, was one of the most vocal advocates for a second referendum. But since taking office, he has firmly ruled out any possibility of joining the EU again. And Mandelson's shift could be a sign that Labour is preparing to move beyond Brexit entirely, embracing a narrative that focuses on adaptation rather than reversal. But can the UK really afford to abandon the idea of deeper EU alignment? Recent polling suggests that the public is increasingly in favor of closer ties with the EU, with many even supporting the idea of full EU membership. A massive YouGov survey found that in nearly every constituency in Britain, the most popular option was improving trade access with the EU, even if it meant following some EU rules and regulations. So if public sentiment is moving in favor of alignment, why is Mandelson advocating for a more US-centric approach? It could be a strategic move to appeal to both Brexit supporters and critics, offering a vision of Britain that doesn't seek to undo Brexit, but rather finds ways to make it work. Will never work, by the way, but okay. It's a delicate balancing act, one that acknowledges the failures of Brexit while still insisting that the UK must chart its own path forward. But let's be honest, there is no simple way out of the Brexit mess. The UK is in a weaker position than it was before the referendum, and any attempt to shift economic focus towards the US will not erase the structural problems caused by leaving the EU. Regulatory divergence might create some advantages, but it also brings risks, particularly if the UK ends up caught between EU rules and US demands without any clear strategic direction. So is this a Brexit U-turn? Well, not in the sense of reversing Brexit altogether, of course, but it is a significant rhetorical shift from someone who was once a leading advocate for undoing Brexit. It suggests that Labour, and perhaps Britain as a whole, is beginning to accept Brexit as a permanent reality rather than something that can be undone. The question now is whether this pivot towards a more US-focused strategy will actually deliver results, or whether it's just another case of wishful thinking. But that is really interesting here to ask, what do you think? Is Mandelson's new stance a necessary adaptation to reality, or is it just another false promise? Should the UK focus on closer ties with the EU, or is there really a path to prosperity outside it? So please let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching Outside Views, and if you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more deep dives into UK politics. See you next time, and the next video is already right here in the end screen.